Hello and welcome to another Thoughts Per Episode Classic Doctor Who edition. Today we are going to be watching through The Gunfighters, another 4-part serial, the penultimate of the surviving stories of Season 3, which really isn't all that many. We are rocketing towards the end of the Hartnell era now. Now this is a historical episode. I'm always slightly tenuous in regards to the historical episodes because I think of the Vikings having horned helmets, and I think of, was it the Executioners, which kind of bored the pants off me a little bit. But hey, I've been looking at my the amount of time it takes me to watch through Classic Who and the amount of seasons there are left, and I've just realised my math didn't take into account the varying episode counts of the various seasons. But either way, I kind of looked ahead and thought, I'll be done in a decade at this rate, so I should probably try and step it up a notch. Worst case scenario though, hey, it's not a bad way to spend a decade. Anyway, looks like this one is set in the Wild West, so looking forward to that. It immediately springs to mind Doctor Who's rival, Star Trek The Original Series, which had a lot of episodes set on, civilizations which were very much in their Wild West eras, which were suspiciously similar, sometimes extremely suspiciously similar to America's own Wild West. So let's see how Doctor Who handles this subject matter. Episode 1, A Holiday for the Doctor. Okay, wow. Actually, this is pretty high production for, these standards. In a way I can't quite put my finger on. It feels like there's just been a lot of almost extra effort put into this story. It opens establishing our cast of period characters, and I must confess to not knowing much, or anything really, about this specific era of history, or area of history. But my understanding is Holiday is a historical figure, and these cowboys, this group of cowboys, want to hunt him down and kill him, and he moves in and he sets up a dental shop, and it says he won't be scared out of town, and all this kind of stuff. And the main premise of the episode is that for a series of unfortunate events, the Doctor ends up getting mistaken for Dr. Holiday, and Dr. Holiday, overhearing this, decides that he can save himself by getting the group of cowboys in town to shoot the Doctor, thinking he's Dr. Holiday, and therefore faking his own death. It's interesting too, because things the Doctor doesn't do: wield a gun, drink, and it's like, how do you get the Doctor into this situation? And he's talking about when Holiday realizes what's going on and very much wants to send the Doctor in his place to get shot, he's then like, what are you doing? You're not even wearing a gun. And he kind of forces the Doctor to wear a gun. And the Doctor's like, well, of course not. I hate violence. What are you talking about? And he's talking about how he should accept the stranger's offer to go and have a drink. He's like, but I don't touch alcohol. He's like, no, go down there. It'll be a great time. I also like how the Doctor got himself into this situation because he has really bad toothache, which I can kind of relate to recently, but I can't relate to your only options for getting your toothache seen to being, the dentist office in, I don't know what time period this would be, the 1700s, the 1800s, and there's no anesthetic or anything, and I think the Doctor ends up getting his tooth pulled, and it's like, jeez. Good thing he's regenerating soon. He's not going to need that jaw for much longer. So one thing I noticed at the start of the episode, first of all, when they land and Stephen and Dodo realise where they are and what time period in, they get very excited and they run into the TARDIS and they find some period-accurate clothing, which is delightful. But also, Stephen comes out wearing a gun on his hip, and it's a real... I don't know if it's ever actually proven to be a real gun, but it's supposed to be a real gun, because the Doctor's, yelling at him to be careful, waving it around. It's part of his collection. And I'm thinking, why the hell does the Doctor have a gun collection, especially when later on in this very same episode, he seems abhorrent about, guns and stuff. I do like that the Doctor says to Stephen and Dodo, why can't you just wear inconspicuous clothing like I do? Now, this is quite a musical episode, in, the fashion of the style of the time. There's lots of songs about the last chance saloon and all that stuff. I like when the Doctor has to scramble to come up with alternate identities for Stephen and Dodo that would make sense, and when they complain about it, he says, I had to make up something. After all, you can't come into a western town claiming you come from outer space. Goodness me, you'll be arrested on a vagrancy charge. This is quite a funny episode in some ways. Something I also find funny is one of the members of this cowboy gang is... he's he's the youthful one, the one who keeps waving his gun around, who's always wanting to fire it. that kind of trope. And at one point, he takes aim at some empty bottles, fires a gun, cracks one, and literally 2 seconds later, Stephen and Dodo waltz into the saloon like it's the best place to be. And I'm thinking, do you not have ears? Are you happy to just walk into this place where you just heard a gunshot? You might be able to hear gunshots every 2 seconds in the Wild West, but you have more modern sensibilities, one would assume. I wouldn't go in there. Anyway, the episode ends when Stephen and Dodo kind of mention the Doctor in passing to each other, and his cowboy gang, who for some reason want to kill Holiday and yet have never actually seen him themselves. Maybe there's a bounty on his head or something, I don't know. They go, oh my god, the Doctor, did you hear that? And then they're like, oh, we need to keep them occupied. And so they force them to come and sing and play the piano, which are lies the Doctor made up about them and their capabilities. And they're kind of held at gunpoint doing this, which is actually quite a fun scene, having Stephen very nervously singing for his life at gunpoint while they're waiting for the Doctor to walk in to get shot. It's a pretty cool cliffhanger. One thing I do find funny though, Dodo can very clearly play the piano. So yeah, overall, surprisingly strong episode. Was not expecting this. The pacing I think is much better than your typical classic Doctor Who episode, which is probably why I enjoyed it. Let's hope they can keep that up for the next 3 episodes. Episode 2, Don't Shoot the Pianist. The intrigue continues. There is a lot of plot to go through in each of these episodes. I do like in the opener when Stephen's been made to sing the same song like 4 or 5 times in a row, and he complains and they make him keep singing, so he sings it really angrily. Dodo complains about not being allowed to play the piano at gunpoint anymore. She doesn't quite seem to understand the situation she's in. She really is written to just have like 2 brain cells, which is a shame. They force Stephen to play the piano, and Stephen can also just magically play the piano. Who knew? The Doctor enters the saloon and is very comedically the opposite of everything Holiday is. He's very polite, he's very humble when they say how notorious and stuff he is. He says he won't drink alcohol, but he asks for a glass of milk, and of course they all take this as him taking the piss. And then when the Doctor finally cottons on to the fact of what's going on, all of his protestations sound like lies. They're like, why did we find you in Holiday's dentistry? And he's like, because I was getting my teeth looked at. And then they're like, then why do you have Holiday's gun? And he's like, because he lent it to me. I mean, he doesn't whine like that. That's all me. He's very much... No, it's... It looks like he accidentally shoots one of the cowboys, but this is later revealed to have been Holiday as he's entering the saloon with his, like, tiny gun. I do like the look of shock the Doctor gives his own gun, and yet... if he thinks he's fired it, he shows very little remorse, and then also, that particular person who gets shot is never seen or heard from again. There's not even a mention of his body still being in the saloon. I had to go back and double check this actually happened, because he just vanishes off the face of continuity. Anyway, in a scuffle, somehow the Doctor gets the better of the gang, and lines them all up and gets Stephen to take their guns, and they are aghast because they think this is dishonourable. He's not looking to have like a duel with any of them. They think he just wants to shoot them all unarmed, which is like the most cowardly, awful thing they could possibly do in that world. Anyway, the sheriff comes in and goes and locks the Doctor up for his own good. In this episode, the sheriff reveals that he's very much in an awkward place because it's just him and the deputy, and then there's this entire gang of cowboys who they can't exactly run out of town with just the 2 of them, so he's waiting for his brothers to arrive. But he's also trying to get Holiday to leave town, and eventually Holiday obliges, except that's not how things eventually play out, of course. Holiday's girlfriend, I think she's called Kate, is talking to Dodo, and she talks about how she's known a lot, and she talks about the most notorious cowboys of history. She's known Billy the Kid, she's known this guy called Johnny Ringo, I'm assuming is one of these. Like I say, I know very little about this time period, but she names a few more who I have heard of and have subsequently forgotten. And just like, really? You knew all of them, huh? You knew all of the historical names? Okay, sure. I feel like this is one of those things where if I go to look it up, I'm going to find out that these people weren't even alive during the same time period. I do like when Stephen swings by the Doctor's jail cell and hands him a gun, and he's like, I'll be back for you in 10 minutes. Use this to bluff your way out of here, and that kind of thing. And when the deputy accosts him, he just like gives him the gun, and he's He's like, here, hold on to this. I don't need this. He's very grumpy. He says, I have no intention of trying anything. Only people keep giving me guns, and I do wish they wouldn't. Hell yeah. Hashtag, that's my doctor. The gang of cowboys decide to take Stephen and, for some reason, Holiday's dental chair, which he's, somewhat precious of. They march on the sheriff's office, and they're gonna, threaten to kill Stephen if they don't get the doctor or whatever. Only, Holiday sees that his dental chair is being taken and goes to chase after the cowboys, except there's one still down in the bottom in the saloon, and Kate's like, Doc, where are you going? And then the cowboy in the saloon realizes he's Holiday, and then they have a duel. He pulls a gun, but Holiday is faster. And that's the events of this episode. I didn't really give you any opinions on them. I just recounted them to you because it was a lot to remember, and I didn't think I was going to, even with the notes. Like I say, a lot is happening. It's pretty cool. I'm enjoying it. I like how much they're sticking to the character of the Doctor and how much of an alien he is in this time period and place. And now it's time for part 3, Johnny Ringo, who, if I recall, played himself as a member of the Beatles in that one episode of The Simpsons. This episode starts with Stephen about to be hanged and the Doctor powerless to stop it, but thankfully the sheriff shows up, promptly bonks the potential hangman on the head, and saves him. I do like how Stephen thinks they're bluffing, and it's like, no, Stephen, the world you're in, they're most definitely not bluffing. Of course, when the sheriff bonks the man on the head and he falls down unconscious, they have to have someone do a very shrill scream as everyone backs away. Wouldn't be a classic Doctor Who episode without a shrill scream sounding as someone gets bonked on the head. The Doctor still seems to be under some illusion that Doc Holliday is an actual dentist, because when told that he shot a man in the saloon and then escaped with Kate and Dodo, he says, don't be ridiculous. Doc Holliday is a dear friend of mine. He gave me a gun, he extracted my tooth, and once again I have to be like, does the Doctor hate guns, or does he like them? Because he seems to flip-flop a lot in this episode. I also love how, as they're walking up the stairs as the Doctor's saying this, and Stephen's going, Doctor, he's a gunman. We cut to Holiday and see him holed up in, one would assume, another saloon, with Kate and Dodo, and he promises to rustle him up some food, walks off screen, we hear 4 gunshots, and he comes back on screen with food and says, sorry I ran into some old friends, they lost their appetite. I'm just like, okay, so I get that that's played for laughs, but is killing a person something that we're going to treat as a moral problem in this frickin' serial or not? You could argue they shot at him and he just ducked out of the way or something, but I don't think that's what's being implied. Then Johnny Ringo shows up and has a nice big long conversation with a barman who helps to establish the fact that Johnny Ringo is notorious. And he is very nervous of him. He says things like, just so you know, that drink's on the house. And he's like, yeah, of course it is. You didn't think I was going to pay for this, did you? And then when the barman foolishly says he can't wait to tell the boys about this one, that's when he seals his own fate, and Ringo turns around and callously shoots him dead so that he won't talk, even though I'm pretty sure the presence of a dead body is gonna do more for Ringo's notoriety in town than, the barman talking about him would. But hey, whatever. We do get to see just how callous and cruel and brave and brazen, I guess the right word is, that Ringo is, because after shooting the barman dead, he then goes and spends the night there. And when the Doctor and Stephen come downstairs in the morning, they see him there, and he doesn't make it, a secret that he's the one who shot the barman. And the Doctor says, you have to wait for the sheriff. But then he says, only Holiday would do something like this. Wink, wink, it wasn't me. And then the Doctor's just fine with it. I can't tell if he's naive or if he's just going along with things. The Doctor's morals fluctuate once more, shock horror. Meanwhile, over with Holiday, Dodo decides to try to take him at gunpoint to force him to take her back to the town where the Doctor is, which obviously is not something that she's very effective at doing. And he's like, well, you're currently aiming between my eyes. If you want to wound me, you're going to have to aim a bit lower down and to the left. And then he very easily takes the gun from her and makes a joke about her getting the draw on him. And then he pulls out his tiny gun from his coat pocket, and then she faints because, of course, she does. I did notice that the Doctor knows who Ringo is because he tells Stephen, "Do you know who that is? That's Johnny Ringo." But then later on, when he's in the sheriff's office, he pretends that he doesn't know Ringo. I don't think that's a writing inconsistency. I think he's just playing the part there. And so he and Stephen and the sheriff ride off to apprehend Ringo. And then the Clanton brothers come in and shoot the deputy and then rescue Clanton, because those are also characters who exist in the serial. On to part 4, the final part. One thing I will say before we move on, though, an opinion on this episode instead of just me recounting what happens to you. I think something this episode suffers from, and something a lot of these classic Doctor Who historical episodes suffer from, is being a little bit too much just about the history that goes on in the episode. I feel like a lot of modern Doctor Who kind of employs like, oh, we're going to have like an alien in the episode even though it's a historical episode, or we're going to do this historical episode but we're going to explore it from a different perspective than the way history is actually told. I think maybe the reason I find some of these historical episodes a little slow is just because they're just kind of there. They're just kind of... It doesn't really need to be a Doctor Who episode. I don't think the Doctor, Stephen and Dodo really add all that much to the story. Their plotline is almost always about them going, wow, look, we're in the past, immediately getting swept up in events, immediately getting imprisoned or some other terrible thing happens to them, and then they just spend the rest of the episode trying to escape the past. But like I said, this isn't one of the worst historical episodes, or historical serials, I guess. I'm enjoying it. So let's go to part 4, the OK Corral. This episode starts with them discovering the death of Charlie the barman and mourning him, for he was widely loved throughout Tombstone. The sheriff decides that they need to do something about this, and so deputizes the Doctor. The Doctor later gets undeputized and then redeputized again. For the most part, it's just fan service, I think, but he does actually get to do something with his newfound authority a little bit later. I was surprised to find that the deputy, who was shot last episode, was still alive, but not for long. Only for long enough for the sheriff to hear his final words and watch him die, which of course stokes the fires of rage within Sheriff Earp. He's called Sheriff Earp, I think, right? Once again, true to form, I do not know everyone's names by the end of the serial. I don't know if I missed a scene or something, but Stephen is with Ringo and is kind of Ringo's prisoner. I guess he took up Ringo's offer of going to find Dodo, who is with Holiday and Kate, but Kate also becomes Ringo's prisoner, and Holiday kind of scarpers with Dodo and joins Team Sheriff. This is mostly how I will be referring to the two sides, Team Sheriff and Team Ringo. We learn that Ringo plans to use the three brothers, the Clanton brothers, as bait, and it plans to creep up behind the Team Sheriff and shoot them all in the back, which of course is a thing which is great taboo within this culture. You'd think that maybe shooting people dead would be great taboo within this culture, and we wouldn't be here in first place, but we can't have nice things. The Doctor is very much set against the sheriff's wishes for vengeance, as is another sheriff who is with him at the time. And the Doctor says, can you not uphold the law without using firearms? So for those of us keeping track, the Doctor is back to hating guns. But yeah, as mentioned previously, the Doctor gets redeputized. He gets undeputized because of this, and then he gets redeputized by the other sheriff, who's like, hey, go talk to the Clantons, tell them that we'll give them a fair trial if they stand down, which of course was never going to work. But of course Ringo's plan is built on the back of not knowing that Holiday is helping the sheriff. But during the gunfight, Ringo almost takes Holiday unawares, and then Dodo jumps in the way and says, Holiday, look out, and then Ringo takes Dodo captive. Holiday throws his gun to the side, and then frickin' Ringo advances on him, but then Holiday pulls out his small gun that he hides in his coat pocket, which we keep being shown. That's a payoff. That's a thing that they've built up and then paid off, isn't it? Good job. And he shoots Ringo dead. And the sheriff and his brother shoot the Clantons dead, and they win the shootout, and that's pretty much the end of the story. The Doctor has a few rumblings about how this isn't a great society to live in. This isn't the best way to uphold the law, and this is really emphasized when Holiday goes to see off the Doctor and friends and says, hey, look at this, the sheriff has put out a bounty on my head, so to kind of like cover up his involvement in the killings, which just goes to show that the law is corrupt, and that is part of the reason why the Wild West is so wild. Holiday gives the Doctor the wanted poster as a keepsake, which I thought would be pretty cool to have hanging around in the TARDIS, but the Doctor quite quickly just tosses it to the side, and he's calling Dodo an American Western stereotype for all the things she's been doing, and he does not approve. I don't know what Dodo could do that the Doctor would approve of, if I'm being perfectly honest. Anyway, that was The Gunfighters, and you know what? I liked it. For a historical episode, which was more, you know, traditionally classic Who, educational, historical episode, not really about fun and exciting monsters and aliens and stuff. I enjoyed it. It was good. We only have one serial left, with the first Doctor being the Doctor throughout the entirety of it. I know that he regenerates kind of like midway through his final serial, that is, and we see some of the second Doctor in it as well. At least that's what I think happens. I don't know where I'm getting that information from. It could be wrong. I'm really excited to find out for myself. But in the meantime, I will see you back here hopefully very soon for that serial. It's called The War Machines. It skips over the Savages serial because that is lost media, and as I've mentioned in the past, I can't really be dealing with watching an entire serial through like really bad quality audio reconstructions and still images from set stuff. So we'll just jump straight ahead to The War Machines and meet back here. My plan is next week. My plan is we'll meet back here next week. How about that? In the meantime, stay subscribed for more. And I make a whole host of other things as well. This is not my usual outro, and I am tripping myself up by doing it. Thanks for watching. Here's some bloopers to play us out. Bloop. Welcome back to another episode of Thoughts Per Episode Classic Doctor Who edition. Today, I need to look at which episode I'm doing first. Hello and welcome to the bloopers. Bloop, and welcome to another episode of Thoughts Per Who? Oh my god, I'm falling at the first hurdle today. Bloop, like when the Steven. Bloop. Alright, time to start talking about part 3 and pretend it hasn't been nearly 2 months since I recorded the first 2 parts. Bloop. This episode starts with Steven about to be hanged and the Doctor and someone. Shit. Fuck. Oh no. I don't remember. Bloop.